In this video, I'll show you how to view your demand charge on your Flathead Electric bill and how to see when it occurred using your online account. The first thing you'll have to do is go to flatheadelectric.com. Then, log in to pay your bill. Once you're logged in, you'll see an overview of all of your accounts on this page. We're going to go to Bill and Pay and then select Billing History so that we can find our latest bill. If you have more than one account, you can use this drop-down up here to select the correct account. My most recent bill is going to show up at the top, and I'm going to go to this View Bill button right here. This is going to open it up as a PDF in a different tab. Okay, so now I have my most recent bill open as a PDF, and I've got it side by side with my SmartHub account, so I can easily compare the two. I'm going to go ahead and find where my demand charge is on my bill. So I'm going to zoom in a little bit, and I can see right here under Current Service Detail. Under Current Service Detail here is all of my electric charges. And then right here I see my demand charge. It was 4.35 kW, and it occurred on September 11th between the hours of 5 and 6 p.m. So now I want to see what that looks like on my online account and view my usage. Now, there's a couple of different ways to get into the Usage Explorer, but for this case, my fastest way for me to find that is going to just be to click on this link right here that says View Usage. Because it's on the same row as this View Bill button that I just opened to get my most recent bill, it's going to filter the date to the day of my last billing cycle. So here I see that this data is from 9/5/2025 to 10/5/25. And if I jump over here to my bill, I see that this is meter data from 9/5/2025 to 10/5/2025. So that's great. That's telling me that the data that I have in SmartHub is the correct set of data for me to view. And I'm just going to scroll down here, and it's going to show me my usage for the past billing cycle. Now these green bars show my kilowatt hours, which is the electricity used over time for each day in this billing cycle. And then by default, it also has this black line which shows the average temperature. You can display the high temperature and the low temperature as well if you want to. And this can be helpful if you have electric heat as your primary heat source. It can also be helpful if you have a really large cooling loads in the summer that use a lot of electricity. It can just enable you to see how the weather affects your electric usage. But for this case, I don't want to see these things, so I'm going to toggle them off so that I have a nice clean view. So once again, in this view, I'm seeing all of my kilowatt hour usage for each day in the last month's billing cycle. So in essence, this view could be thought of as your total kilowatt hours per day view. But I am not looking for kilowatt hours per day. I'm looking for my highest demand. So how do I see that? Well, if I scroll up here just a little bit, under this drop down here, I can change my usage type from kWh, which is kilowatt hours over time, to demand, which is kW, or it could be kWh and demand. I'm going to choose kilowatt hours and demand. So the kilowatt hours, or the usage over time, is showing in this green as a stacked bar, and the demand reading is showing up as this black line. Now, there's three important things that I want to explain here. The first thing to notice is the difference in these graphs' axes. Since the kWh side is showing usage over the time interval of 1 day, it's stacking up all of the energy that I've used over that entire day to get the total energy use for that 24-hour period. And then the demand line, on the other hand, is different. It's a measure of my highest hourly demand just during our peak hours. So that demand is going to be a much smaller value than the total kilowatt hour usage per day, which is why the graph's axes have different numbers from each other. We'll see here on this side that this is reading at 25, 50, and 75 for the kWh side. And for the demand side, it's reading at 1, 2, 3, and 4. So we're not comparing apples to apples in this graph. So this demand line correlates with this axis, and these kilowatt hour bars correlate with this axis. Okay, the second thing that I want you to notice here is that there's a flat line down at 0, and this occurs regularly. It looks like it's always on Saturdays and Sundays. Now, that's not because I didn't have electric demand on those days. Every day that you use electricity, any electricity at all, there's going to be an electric demand. But the line here is showing at 0 simply because we don't bill for demand on Saturdays and Sundays. We only charge for demand during the peak hours of 7 to 10 a.m. and 5 to 8 p.m. Monday through Friday only. We also do not have a demand charge on major holidays. The third thing I want to note in this view is that I had 3 different peaks, but I only have 1 demand charge on my bill. So even though I had these 3 separate peaks here, I only get charged for this first peak because it was the highest. These other 2 times my demand peaked at 4.1, and then over here it peaked at 4.22, but I'm only charged 1 time for my highest peak that occurred during the peak hours, and that was at 4.35, and that's what's on my bill. Now, I'd like to drill down into the daily data for September 11th. So I'm going to find September 11th right here, and I can see more information for that day just by clicking right on it. Now this is taking me into my meter data for that day, and it's taking all that raw data and aggregating it into chunks of time here. And what we see here is all my hourly interval data. In this view, what we're seeing is my kilowatt hour usage over each hour in the day for this 24-hour period. And notice that the demand line went away. Well, why is that? Well, if we hover over the hour that we know is my peak demand during those peak hours, we will see that there is 1 data point on here. In the mobile app, it looks slightly different, and you'll see just 1 yellow colored dot right here. This is when, from an instantaneous demand perspective, my meter measured my highest demand for that day that occurred during the stated demand hours, 7 to 10 a.m. and 5 to 8 p.m. So every other weekday of the billing cycle is also going to have 1 of these dots. All right, remember when the screen was loading a little bit earlier, and what we saw before it gave us this chart was a really jagged line in both the green and also the black? And then what happened was the software distilled down all of that meter data to just the pertinent information, which was the kilowatt hours over each hourly interval, as well as a single highest peak during peak demand hours. Additionally, at this hourly interval level, it's also good to realize that these bars are a snapshot of your demand over the course of each day. At this view, each of these green bars is equal to both our hourly demand and our kilowatt hours per hour view. Now, how does that work? All right, well, let's go back to our school days math class and think about fractions for just a second. 3 kilowatts over the course of 1 hour is equal to 3 kilowatt hours. That makes sense, right? And we would represent that by saying 3 kilowatts times 1 hour is equal to 3 kilowatt hours. All right, so anytime that you can multiply something, you can also divide it. So if we reverse that, we could divide 3 kilowatt hours by 1 hour, and then what would we get? We'd get 3 kilowatts because the hours would cancel each other out. So in this view, at our hourly interval data, we're viewing kilowatt hours per hour, which is essentially the same as just kilowatts, but only at this level. In the previous view, we were looking at how many kilowatt hours you used in each 1 day interval, or the kilowatt hours per day. So what you're actually looking at in this view is your hourly kilowatt demand. This view can be really helpful for me to get a snapshot of what my hourly demand is doing during a 24-hour period. Now, according to my bill, my billable demand peaked between the hours of 5 to 6 p.m. And we can see that we have a reading for kilowatt hours at that interval at 4.35 kilowatt hours. And we also have a reading of kilowatts at 4.35 kilowatts because we used 4.35 kilowatts over this 1 hourly interval. Make sense? Let's remember once again that the peak hours are from 7 to 10 a.m. and 5 to 8 p.m. I'm going to overlay that info onto the screen, and then we get a much clearer picture of what my use is during demand hours. One thing I notice is that 4.35 is not my highest peak of the entire day. I actually had a really high peak right here at 10.5 right after the peak hours ended. And this information is actually really helpful to me because it shows me that I have been shifting my peak. I have been doing the things in my home that I know about to try to shift my peak and to not use as much electricity during those peak hours. So for example, I know that I've been consciously trying not to start a load of laundry right when I get home from work, but wait until after the peak hours, or to schedule my dishwasher to run later at night, things like that. And this view shows me that I really have been making some good choices with my electric use and controlling my bill. Even though I don't necessarily like seeing this 4.35 kW at $4.04, when I think about it, it could have been 10.5 at $4.04, and that would have been a lot higher. You can follow these same steps on the mobile app as well, and we'll share a separate video for that. By checking your usage regularly, you'll better understand your energy usage in your home and when your highest demand occurs. And that can help you take control of your energy costs.